this is the mathematical explanation for that. Right now, this is the challenge that the opposition faces in many of the states. Clearly, on a very, very strong wicket when it comes to 2024. Uh, I think unless something really extraordinary or one of those black swan events happens in the next 2.5 years, I think we can actually stick our necks out and say that at this point in time, it pretty much looks like the BJP is coming back to power in 2024.
Hi, you're watching Hindustan Times. I'm Aditi Prasad. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his speech celebrating the BJP's victory in Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Manipur, and Goa, said that the assembly election mandate gave a glimpse of what was to come in 2024. Now, he may have a point given BJP's increased vote share, particularly in Uttar Pradesh, the state that sends 80 MPs to the Lok Sabha. But then 2 years is a long time in politics. I have with me Hindustan Times Editor-in-Chief Sukumar Ranganathan to unpack what does Verdict 2022 mean for the future of Indian politics. And I'm not just talking about 2024, but beyond. Sukumar, let me just start with what Prime Minister Modi said and yesterday in his grand victory speech after the party won a great mandate and came back to power in the four states in which it had gone to polls. Now, what do you understand from Modi's saying that this is what 2024 is giving you a glimpse of 2024?
I found the speech interesting for two aspects. The first one, of course, was uh, the triumphalism and the confidence that was on play, which is only to be expected because this is the best of all possible outcomes for the BJP.
Right.
They won all four states where they were in power, and they were never a serious player in Punjab. I don't think they expected to do well there. Um, so this is exactly what they could have hoped for, and they got it. And the second thing that I found interesting was the fact that he emphasized on one point which I think was key to the BJP's victory. He spoke about focusing on what the poor want and understanding that that is what is helping the party in so many ways. And I think in many ways there are a lot of aspects, but we've discussed this in the past. There's this stream of welfareism that runs through the BJP's policies, which really helped them. And it was interesting to see the Prime Minister acknowledge this. And I think part of it also comes from the fact that it's not, to deliver welfare measures effectively and efficiently, you need to have a mechanism like the one the BJP built. But more importantly, you need to be in power, right? I mean, in the
Yeah.
center and in the states. And the fact that the BJP is in power in the center and the states is interesting. I mean, just as an aside, it's important they keep speaking about this double engine model, right? I mean,
Right.
in the state, the same government in the state as well as in the center. But if you look at a lot of the schemes that the BJP launches, these are in areas which are either in the concurrent list or some of them could even be in areas which are in the state list. These are central schemes. And the BJP spends a lot of money on this, and and they deliver it efficiently. And it's not just from the governance point of view. I think it's a great political tool, right? I mean, because at the end of the day, the center then gets credit for the scheme. So I think the speech had so many multiple layers. And your question was more about 2024 and what the Prime Minister said. And it's interesting he mentioned 2024. It is but natural that a winner says, great, this is a semi-final for 2024, just like the loser is likely to say, no, this is not going to have any impact on 2024.
True.
But let's dissect the results, look at the numbers, and see what it means. And if you were to extrapolate the results that came in yesterday across these four states, I'm leaving out Punjab, right? I mean, you look at all the four states that the
True.
BJP won, and you extrapolate these results to the Lok Sabha, and then compare it to the 2019 Lok Sabha where the BJP did superlatively well. right? I mean,
Mm.
it even bettered its performance from 2014. And in each one of these states, their number is very close to the vote share number that they achieved in that Lok Sabha election once that extrapolation is completed, which basically
Mm.
means 2.5 years after that election got over, the BJP's ability to garner votes remains the same, which is which is another way of looking at what is going to happen in 2024. But it's great for the BJP. I think it's bad news for the opposition, given that there's a lot of talk about now a new kind of federal front which takes on the BJP in 2024. But the fact is, and one of these four states is Uttar Pradesh, which, as you pointed out, sends 80 people to parliament. Um, no reduction in vote share. So when you
Right.
extrapolate it,
In fact, an
and this
increase in
is
vote share.
no, that was in Uttar Pradesh. The increase in vote share is from 2017 to
True. Yeah,
2022.
yeah, yeah.
If you were to look at a direct vote share comparison between 2019 and 2022, you will actually see a decrease because that was the BSP and the SP fought that election
Combined.
together, and the BJP's vote share was almost 50%. But if you were to extrapolate these results to Lok Sabha constituencies, it actually almost reaches that level, right? So and I know people vote differently in state elections and national elections, but even with that discounting factor, which means the BJP should have been at a disadvantage if you just
In
looked
the
at the
state.
state
Yeah.
results, but they are not, right? So clearly on a very strong wicket when it comes to 2024. Uh, I think unless something really extraordinary or one of those black swan events happens in the next 2.5 years, I think we can actually stick our necks out and say that at this point in time, it pretty much looks like the BJP is coming back to power in 2024.
Yeah, political strategist Prashant Kishore, and let me start with what he said. He, of course, has said that the battle for India will be fought and decided in 2024 and not in any state election. Obviously, a sense of bravado, and I'm speaking then from the point of view of all opposition. What does this mean for opposition parties? You know, they might trash Modi's statement that this is a sort of a peek, a glimpse into what's going to happen in 2024. But the fact remains that the opposition. What does this mean for the opposition as far as 2024 is concerned, going forward?
Before I get onto that, I'm just going to indulge myself and
Sure.
just speak about
Dissect a little more. Okay.
no the mathematics of elections a little bit more,
Yes.
and of course it's linked to your question. If you are to look at very local elections, right? I mean, the more local an election, which means you go down to the panchayat level or the urban body level, and you look at the track record when you have a national political hegemon like the BJP, and you look at it even when the national political hegemon was the Congress, right? I mean, and you look at it, it's easier for the opposition to win a very local election, right? Because why? Because the constituency is very small, easier to win at that level, where extremely local factors might come into play, right? I mean, at a urban body or a panchayat level election, it might be last year my grandmother died and this leader came to my house to express his sympathy, right? I mean, it could be as
Yeah.
localized as that. Then you move to the state election, where it becomes a little more difficult, but it is still easier than the national election for an opposition party to win against the national hegemon. The minute you move to the national level, I mean, now you're thinking of, when I say national level, I'm speaking of parliamentary constituencies. You're speaking about constituencies which in many Indian states, the Indian states which are large and populous, right? So you look at the Hindi heartland, you look at some of the South Indian states, other than many of these states, the parliamentary constituencies are reasonably big. So in many of these states, that is why you see a variation between how uh, the electorate votes in state elections and it votes in national elections. The classic example of this is, of course, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan, which happened the last
Rajasthan.
time around, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you were to look at the 2018 results in the state elections and extrapolate them, you would have expected the Congress to do well in 2019 in these states, but it did not, right? Did extremely badly. Even if you were to extrapolate the findings of the Gujarat election, which again was in 2017, and these other states were in 2018. If you were to do Gujarat and extrapolate it, the Congress didn't do badly in the state elections. So they should have done reasonably well in the Lok Sabha election, but they didn't. They got wiped out. And this is the mathematical explanation for that. Right? Now, this is the challenge that the opposition faces in many of the states. It's clearly not there in some states, especially in states in South India where the issues themselves are very, very different. But in many of the other states, this is the challenge that the opposition faces. And I think it's all well for them to speak of, we will look at Kejriwal, look at Akhilesh Yadav, look at this and everything else. And I am not sure that they understand the enormity of the mathematical challenge that faces them. And I am not sure they understand the fact that in many of these Lok Sabha constituencies, the contest until now has been a bipolar contest between the BJP and the Congress. And given the way the Congress is, it's going to be very, very difficult for the opposition to really get the numbers. So it's all well for them, for various chief ministers to spend time on talking to each other and saying we will put up a federal front and everything else, which is great. And I think it's important because I think this government has become very centralized. And I think we need a more federated approach to running this country. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that these guys have the wherewithal to make to achieve the mathematics that is required to win in 2024, and they will have to find a way of doing that.
Okay. Since we're talking about the opposition, I think it will be a grave error if we don't talk about Arvind Kejriwal. I mean, the man, from a bureaucrat to a social activist to a political leader to two times Delhi chief minister, and now the expansion of the Aam Aadmi Party to Punjab. Many have already started viewing him as an alternative to BJP. And there are also prime ministerial ambitions linked with him. His own party leaders have gone ahead and said that. Let's just give our viewers a sense of Kejriwal and what his AAP's expansion from one state or one union territory a party to another sort of to a larger pan-Indian party, which has just started. I'm saying, as I said, it's too early. But do you think that's how this trajectory of a new opposition grouping could possibly get fillip with the rise of Kejriwal?
Good question. And let's look at what Kejriwal has done in Delhi, which has sort of made people in other states aspire so much, right? I mean, we have a very nice column by one of our colleagues this morning in the edit page um, on why people of Punjab were so enamored of Delhi, and I found it fascinating. And he's also written it a little bit tongue in cheek, saying that as a Delhi resident, he tried to tell them that a lot of it, I mean, that they were making much more of it than there really was. But so it's a very aspirational kind of appeal. But let's break it up and see what works for Kejriwal. And I think there are two or three things that work for him, right? I mean, the first one is the huge emphasis on welfare, right? You look at the number of freebies that offers in terms of Delhi, water and power in Delhi, and Similar promises have been made in Punjab. I don't want to go into the economic merits of this, but that's one. So, welfare and efficient delivery of welfare. The second thing is the emphasis on education and health, where they've actually done some work. You look at Delhi schools, and I think the Mohalla Clinic concept was a good concept. Right? People play a lot of politics around it, but if you know how healthcare works in this country, Aditi, you will realize that this is one of those
True.
things that we need to address, and having a first level efficient first level delivery mechanism like the Mohalla Clinic was a good idea.
Great idea.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and the third one was tremendous appeal among women, right? Now, does this sound familiar to us? Because if you
Yes.
were to ask people, they would say like, "Oh, this is why the BJP wins various states." So sure, there's this added element of Hindutva, which the BJP has, which helps it consolidate the Hindu vote, and so I think we are seeing the emergence of a new sort of, I mean, I hate to use the word, a new sort of paradigm in politics where this seems to really be working for AAP. Will it work in other states? Education and health, especially, are hugely aspirational areas. It's worked in Punjab, but a lot will depend on what they achieve in Punjab. And let's please remember, they're not up against the competition that they were up against in Punjab when they go to states like Gujarat. Gujarat is the BJP's backyard.
Right.
Uh, BJP should have lost the last election given the level of anti-incumbency that was there. They won it.
Right.
I just think that it's not going to be easy. A lot will depend on what they do in Punjab, but it is a good model that they have, right? Don't. Uh, so you look at AAP's approach, doesn't take on the BJP when it comes to issues which are perceived to be nationally sensitive or communally sensitive. Very efficient delivery of welfare, focus on aspirational issues like health and education, and huge appeal among women, and seems to work for them. So maybe again, economics apart, maybe that is the new model of politics that we are going to see play out in this country for the next 10, 15 years. And it seems to be translatable, right? That's why we are all talking about AAP so much. We are not talking about TRS or TMC or any of the other
Or
guys so
even
much because
Akhilesh Yadav, who has
no, no,
improved his.
yeah,
Uh,
maybe, but they are
right.
quite honestly, and one of my
As
colleagues
I
put
said,
it
we're
best.
not talking about Akhilesh Yadav. We're talking about
Yeah, and
Kejriwal,
Akhilesh
but
Yadav,
for
quite
that reason.
honestly, I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly. So he's actually managed to translate what worked for him in Delhi, however small this may be, however it might be a
True.
union territory, to Punjab. And I remember more than one political pundit telling me over the years, this is a model that can work only in Delhi. So if it's not going to work anywhere else, well, Kejriwal and co have shown that it can be translated into Punjab, right? That it works there. That can be translated into Punjabi, right? I mean, can they make it work in other areas? Perhaps, but is it going to work overnight? Unlikely. Various circumstances have to come together. A lot also depends on the kind of opposition that they are facing. Uh, I can assure you that at this point in time, AAP's model in terms of what worked for it in uh, Punjab is being carefully dissected and read by its opponents to see what worked and how they can ensure that this same thing doesn't happen to them in states where they are in power. But
But also,
it works.
also it took a while for it to work for Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab. They've been at it since
Yeah.
2014.
Yeah, but this is a startup party, right? Less than
Right.
10 years old. So for a
Less
party
than 10 years. Absolutely.
less than 10 years old to get two governments, very significant.
Very
That
significant. Let's
yeah.
let's talk about the third big protagonist of this 2022 verdict. We've talked about PM Modi, we've talked about Kejriwal, Yogi Adityanath, the third big protagonist coming out of this 2022 verdict. What does this mean for him? Obviously, his stature within the party rises from central leaders rushing to Uttar Pradesh just about 6 months or 4 months before the elections to sort of listen to the party workers, see what the problems are, sending a clear message perhaps that everything was not all hunky dory for Yogi Adityanath within the party. Now suddenly he's got a different sheen on him. Where do you see that taking? And do you think now the talks about possible succession, as I said, too early? Possible
No.
succession will.
I have a slightly different view. It's an unpopular view. It's a contrarian view. It, this was Modi's win. I'm very clear about that. There may be people who disagree with me, but it has been evident to me from last year, and especially after the debacle in West Bengal, that the Prime Minister had taken charge of the Uttar Pradesh election. This was his election. Uh, we sent a lot of people onto the field, and we have a fairly large operation in UP. We have an edition in Lucknow, which does quite well. People traveled, people met various people. Uh, there was significant, uh, what can I say, negativity about Yogi, even within the party, even within workers. There was a feeling that he was a little too mercurial. There was a feeling that he was a little too my way or the highway type when it came to managing things. There was a feeling that there was takurwa, that's various people call it. So, and a lot of this was not in the air. This was from die-hard BJP workers in the field, right? The BJP works on the back of a very strong political machinery. So there was this feeling. So I know that he's won, and victory sort of, I mean, it paints everything over. Most analysts are looking at this victory and saying that, oh, great, he's going to emerge as a big leader. Of course, it will increase his stature within the party. It will increase his stature in the country because he's won a state which is as important as Uttar Pradesh. But those issues were overcome by the party through a variety of ways. You look at the number of leaders who've spent time there over the last 6 months and the kind of effort that they've put in. And Dharmendra Pradhan, Anurag Thakur, Sunil Bansal. Then you have the Prime Minister himself. You have Home Minister Amit Shah. You have Nadda, JP Nadda, the party president. I think they just threw resources at it in such a significant way, focused on the nitty-gritties, overcame internal party issues, right, among the workers especially. So this is the collective effort. Obviously, the credit will go to the man who is in charge because they decided early on that he was going to be their chief ministerial face. He would continue to be their chief ministerial face, which is great. But to immediately ascribe this victory entirely to him, I think is doing a disservice, and I think the analysis is a little too fat. So yes, it does make him an important leader. It increases his stature within the party and in the country. And I quite honestly think all talk of succession is extremely premature at this point in time. Like I
Okay.
said, contrarian view, not what you will read in today's newspapers, perhaps including ours too, where there are people who said that he is
Yogis.
the man, right? He's done well. He's definitely the man when it comes to UP, but I'm not sure he is the man, right? At this point in time, there's clearly one person who is the man.
Right, and as I said, as we were talking before this, there are some columnists, analysts who already started looking at 2029 as a battle between Yogi Adityanath and Kejriwal, and I'm talking 2029, not
Yeah.
2024. Maybe to yeah, you were saying
Much too premature, much too premature. And
much too premature.
it's always easy to analyze an election after it happens. Huh? And so I would hesitate very much to go down there.